Our chief guest for the morning and who's our mentor for more than 3 decades and जे आपल्या भारतीय सांस्कृतिक संबंध परिषदेचे अध्यक्ष आहेत आदरणीय डॉक्टर विनय सहस्त्रबुद्धेजी, प्राध्यापक डॉक्टर दीपक फाटक पद्मश्री आणि आम्ही सर्वच मंडळी वेलिंगकरमध्ये मी असेन पेंडसे सर आमच्या असतील सगळी मंडळी आपल्याकडे नेहमीच बघतो IT टेक्नॉलॉजी क्षेत्रामध्ये. दीपक गैसत सर आमच्या बोर्डवर गेले 25 वर्षापेक्षा जास्ती आहेत. ही इज ऑलवेज अ मेंटॉर, व्हेरी स्ट्रॉंग काइंड ऑफ सपोर्टर फॉर ऑल ऑफ अस. हरीश मेहताजी, who is one of the phenomenal author. He mentioned in his interview that I'm not a writer, I'm not an author, I'm not a historian, but sir, the way in which you scripted this book, which is par excellence. Fortunately, त्यांच्याबरोबर मी COEPच्या बोर्डवर एक 10 वर्ष होतो, 2004 ते 2014. आय हॅव सीन हिज वर्क अँड हिज द रिस्पेक्ट विच इज कमांडेड. लिमयजी, तुम्ही खूपच सुरेख कार्य केलेलं आहे आणि तुमचा हा आजचा जो presence ahe, it is very motivating for all of us. Thank you very much. We have many very senior, I'll say, legends from the IT industry. We have Raj here, we have Ninad here, we have Dandekarji here. Many legends are here. But for paucity of time, I'll just say the luminaries in the audience, my faculty colleagues and students who are here. Keeping in mind, my audience of faculties and students are not necessarily all understand good Marathi. That's why I requested Deepak ji. I said, allow me to speak in English. I'm sure, I think, otherwise, फाटक साहेबांनी ज्या प्रकारे अस्खलित मराठीमध्ये म्हटलं आम्हाला शिकायलाच नेहमी आवडेल. I'm just going to go through maybe 10 minutes of window which is given to me. I'm just going to pick up certain learning curve, management lessons which I can learn as a teacher and which I can share with the audience here, comprising of teachers, students, and I'm sure a lot of senior people from the marketplace. One of the first and foremost which I really liked, which Harish has mentioned in author's note, was he was inspired by nature and seek lessons from the nature of nature. It is wonderful. आपण नेहमीच म्हणतो की आपण निसर्गाकडून शिकतो आणि बऱ्याचदा मला आमच्या विद्यार्थी मित्रांना सांगायचं आहे, फॉर स्टुडंट्स, फ्रेंड्स अँड टीचर्स ॲज वेल, that the classroom is not 4 walls defined by the regulators. Classroom is far beyond 4 walls and very well defined or very well mentioned by Harishji in terms of in the midst of the nature when he wandered, move around, and ups and downs which he has witnessed in the life was something awesome. So a couple of pointers which I could pick up from there. So nature, at least I'm trying to draw interpretation for me. Definitely nature per se. It may be forest, it may be sea, it may be anything, but it can be also market. It can be also public places. It can be multiple. That interpretation you can look into it from your point of view. So there is a great learning, and one of the first learning in that which I pick up is the interconnectedness. All these dots, when you look into it, you'll find there's a tremendous learning curve in terms of that collaboration. And this entire story of NASSCOM is that collaboration, is that we spirit which is being exhibited by Harishji and his team. Likewise, second point within this, that learning from nature of nature is again adaptability. How nature gets adapted to different situations. Maybe even the bad weather, bad situation in today's time of climate change, also one can see really still. Nature really goes ahead, still stand tall. And there's a lot of kind of, I'll say, deal for us to learn. And we always say that there's a like coexistence or no existence. There's a synergy which we can learn from the nature. There's a resilience which we can learn from the nature. And there are multiple stories which one can really see. One can really also learn in terms of balance, diversity, sustainability, cyclical reasons, innovation through observations. I'm sure many of you may be aware of the aerodynamic shape of the bullet train was not out of the blue. But it was picked up from nature. Velcro is a brilliant example from the nature. In fact, for flying object, Leonardo da Vinci, he actually designed first flying objects taking the clue from the nature. So at least my sense is, and for the young students, if you really study biomimicry, you will find there's a great deal of learning for us from the nature. And to some extent, I used to do Harishji, trekking, rock climbing, mountaineering. I used to love to be in the midst of the nature. And I feel the first lesson what you shared in this is something which is outstanding. The other part which Dr. F.C. Kohli is one of the example which you mentioned is brilliant. Dr. Fakir Chand Kohli. Whatever 10 years I could learn from him from distance, he being a chairman. May he always is to go beyond the call of the duty, going to IIT Mumbai always, or even to others, and get the best for the COEP. So we should not feel ashamed to get it for your own institution, to your own organization, if the intent is genuine and for the larger purpose. And that was, and even Dr. Sharu Rangnekar sir, what you mentioned, Hariji. Again, personality is par excellence. We happen to interact on many occasions in Pune in our fraternity. And I'm going to move now to at least some of the lessons which I picked up. One of the first lesson, and this book I shared with my faculty colleagues, that we should have a 2-hour, 3-hour deliberation only on this book. I just now mentioned to Hariji, if your time permits, we'll be happy to invite you specifically for this particular purpose, and even for students also, we will make them to go through. The one of the first chapter, which is talking about a tale of the two countries, in that the one of the takeaway, which is build conviction in ideas even when external validation is absent. A lot of time you may not have any benchmark outside, you may not have any evidences, but that has to come from within. And that kind of aspect, that kind of conviction, when he has initiated, I'm sure, in Hariji's office, when the NISCOM took a birth, so that actually aspect which is very much convincing for me. The second one is the Pathshala. I'm sure he had been kind of attending Pathshala with the Jain philosophies that shape your mindset and leadership approach. But in that, one aspect out of the 4 principles which is mentioned, which really appealing to me, as a student in COAP, he's shown exemplary, I'll say, courage and even determination to raise almost 1 lakh as a fund for actually starting a free library. The school days, my college days, raising 1 lakh, and those days, it must be 70s, almost early 70s or so. So it was fascinating. It is a great example of social entrepreneurship. Taking it forward in that, key takeaway in this second chapter is power of ecosystem that will support tech companies and individuals through networking, mentoring, and collaboration. I'm a part of multiple similar associations, but I know many of those associations are in shambles. I was sharing with Hariji just now. We have a board meeting of Association of Indian Management Schools. India has 5,000 business schools. And this association is second largest network of the business schools in the world. In fact, I wish to give them the copies of your book, and I wish to probably tell them that learn from NASCOM, learn from Harishji and all other leaders, and I'm sure AIMS has again major role to play. If the business schools don't play a role effectively, then who's going to play? So that kind of chapter is outstanding. And the third chapter is talking about, in terms of the takeaway for me, is very clearly aspiring change makers, and this is for the even faculties and the students also. Aspiring change makers must be ready to deal with subtle resistance and internal politics while pushing new ideas. You will always face resistance. You will always have politics happening within the organization. You will not get everything on the platter. So I think we should not be surprised. And I'm actually very much convinced about it. The next one is fold the future. And in that, one of the quote which is being mentioned by Hariji is C.K. Prahlad said, "You must fold the future in." It's not really cut, paste, copy, but go for, and not only to kind of, extrapolate something which is just happening and which is very incremental, but bring in innovation, bring in a different mindset, bring in not only best practices, but bring in next practices. That's the way even CK has mentioned about it. And in that, one of the very strong point we mentioned by Hariji in terms of key takeaways, building institutions with democratic values, inclusive dialogue, and strong governance lays the foundation for long-term success and sustainability. Likewise, the next one is thriving in chaos. Now this again, the key takeaway is personally applicable to many of us, personally even for me, but the key takeaway is personal adversity can be powerful trigger for transformation, driving leaders to make meaningful lifestyle and strategic changes. I'm sure, Hariji, you did certain changes, which I read in the book. It was very touching. And I'm sure many of our youngsters, it may be digital addiction, it may be many other kind of vices, and probably which may impact on your long-term, I'll say, stint. So I think this is in a nutshell, I'm sure when you read the book, you will get to know. The next one, in fact, in this, the key takeaway in the next chapter, in the pillar of NASCOM, when Sir is talking about, great institutions are built when competitors unite for a common purpose beyond individual gain. Co-opetition is the name of the game which you already discuss about, and I'm sure that is doable. Market is huge. So I think whatever we are doing, and some of our AIMS board members are sitting here in audience. So you can also keep in mind this is very important. And next point in this key takeaways, which I'm sure some of students are familiar, teachers are familiar, collaboration without personal agendas and a growth mindset are cornerstones of organizational longevity. So growth mindset, not fixed mindset. I'm sure this is the name of the game. The next one, which I think topic is very apt in terms of roti, kapada, makan and bandwidth. And the key takeaway, at least one of which I picked up, is transformative change. It's a transformative change. Transformative change happens when industry leaders, institutions, and policymakers align around a shared national vision. The shared vision, I'm sure students go through Michael Porter and a lot of other kind of who's who in the world, but that shared vision does make a lot of sense. Next chapter is Proud to be Indians. And Proud to be Indians is awesome. In fact, Devang and the team leverage when India won Miss India, Miss Universe. And I remember I spent some time at that time in Asian Institute Management in Manila in 97 August. And I believe Sushmita won just before that. So the way in which everybody was feeling proud of India is awesome. But connecting the dots and sensing the future or maybe creating the pattern, I think that's a very uncanny, and even the team did from outsourcing to BPO kind of thought process to BPM kind of thought process, which is really outstanding. In this chapter, again, this is a very important learning curve for all of us. Building a strong brand requires more than a good product. It needs consistent communication and perception management. Consistent communication and perception management with the stakeholders. The next chapter is the copyright versus the right to copy. And in that, visionary leadership sees systemic problems. Visionary leadership sees systemic problems and drives reform that can change a nation's global standing. That systemic issues, systemic challenges, that's again wonderful. The next chapter is on Devang Mehta, on more revolved around the purpose, passion and tireless nation building. But one or two key takeaways in this, which I feel passion and purpose can be more powerful than position or pay. Sometimes we do discuss about untitled leadership. Does make sense. Every time you may not get a titles, every time you may not get a pay package hike, or we are waiting for pay commissions. But I think sometimes if the purpose is larger purpose, can be so much drive you eternally, not even internally. So second one in this is again very important key takeaways. Visionary leadership often involves personal sacrifice for collective progress. So personal sacrifice to some extent, we may speak about work and life balance and everything is fine, but somewhere to build the institutions, it doesn't happen overnight and it takes decades altogether, and which is being very clear. The last 2-3 chapters I'm coming to, next chapter is from Krishna to Ram. It's a wonderful kind of, I'll say, mention of Devang Mehta is seen as a Krishna-like figure who led NASSCOM during a period of transformation. And the other, unlike Devang, Kiran was low-key, calm and deliberate. Kiran Karnik was alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad. And in that key takeaway, which at least, again, is very important from leadership students' point of view, learners' point of view. Leadership must evolve with the life stage of an organization. What works during disruption may not work during consolidation. At different phases of the life of an organization, do we need to change the trigger? Do we need to change the leadership style? And sometimes maybe even the team members. And one more in this is adversity is a test of character, an opportunity for leaders to prove their mettle. Leadership can be proven the best in the adversities. The chapter 12 is the finest hour. I'm sure many of you must have watched Apollo 13. Apollo 13 is a fantastic movie. So Apollo 13 kind of comparison when Satyam issue happened. And I can share you too, in fact, when Satyam happened just 2 days before, I was in Hyderabad. And next to me was, so Ramlilanga Raju was there and it was a forum in ISB. I couldn't get an inkling of anything. What is going to happen, maybe just, and our MRA was chairman of ISB those days, and he was also president of our association. So it was a very different, challenging moment. But I liked one point in this, outstanding. It's really, when Som Mittal took over this organization, and at that time, Som appealed to NASSCOM member companies, do not poach Satyam's employees are still their clients. In an extraordinary show of solidarity, the industry listened, and despite the fall of its founder, Satyam was not left to collapse. Its employees remained committed, working diligently through uncertainties. Very, very rare example you'll find wherein association coming together and safeguarding the interest of maybe even the company got a really bad name. And coming to second last chapter, but in this chapter, key takeaway which I really liked is industry solidarity in times of crisis is a powerful strategic asset. Competition can pause to protect collective reputation. I think coming together as an association, as a forum, I think which is really very, very critical. Next chapter is an association, a catalyst, a movement. And in this, one of the aspects which I really liked quite a bit is trust in human capital drives sustainable growth. Supporting any player, foreign or local, that invest in people is a sound growth strategy. If the purpose is large and if our people are getting developed, nurtured in a kind of our own country, maybe even by the foreign players, if that is going to be long-term strategy for the nation, I'm sure people may kind of look into it. And in this institutional trust matters, being a neutral, non-profit body, gave NASSCOM moral authority in both governments and corporate corridors. Last, final chapter, which is on transformation 2.0. What will it take for India to become the Sone ki Chidiya, the golden bird, once again? And in this, couple of points which are very critical. One, celebrate failure and learn from it. I'm sure we always talk about it, that the failures are maybe 98-99% of the marketplace. Success rate is just 1%. Innovation rate may be 1%. The learning from failures is infinite. So we should not actually put that as a stigma. Those days are over wherein probably it is to be taken as a stigma. And early failure often leads to breakthrough innovations. That's also the name of the game. And likewise, building a nation that can dream big and recover fast from this. And the final one is a powerful blend of Atmanirbhar, self-reliance, and Paraspar Nirbhar, that mutual dependence. And we also always believe that it is not independence, but interdependence, from which we can really cut down the throughput time so much to achieve our goals collectively. And that entire journey has proven NASSCOM coming out as a constellation of the stars. There are many stars, I'm sure, sitting here in the audience, on the stage, off stage, but it is fantastic. And the learning and key takeaways in this is unite for policy change. Industries must collaborate and speak with one voice to help the government formulate effective policies. Leadership is about connecting the dots. NASSCOM acted like a constellation binder, aligning people, talent, ideas, and policies into a shared direction. And final one is anyone can be a firefly. Change doesn't require a title or authority. Every citizen has a power to light up the darkness in the sphere of influence. And with this, I'm sure there's so much of learning curve for all of us as a learner in whatever role we must be playing in the society or in the educational institution, maybe in the companies. But this book would be, in my opinion, would be a phenomenal transformational for anybody's life. Ariji, thank you very much. And Deepakji, thanks for involving us in this entire endeavor. Thank you very much.